"Grandpa, Mom said you're going to live with the old people tomorrow," whispered my 7-year-old grandson, his innocent blue eyes wide with concern as he clutched his action figure to his chest. That single sentence hit me like a freight train, harder than when my wife of 42 years died, harder than my cancer diagnosis 3 years ago. My own daughter was shipping me off to a nursing home without even discussing it with me, and I found out from the mouth of a child. But here's the part that will truly shock you. 2 months later, I watched as my daughter and son-in-law were escorted out of my home by police officers. Their faces were pale with disbelief as I stood on the porch, my grandson's small hand in mine, my lawyer beside me with a folder of documents that changed everything. The look of absolute betrayal on my daughter's face was almost satisfying. Almost. You're probably wondering how we got from point A to point B. How did I go from being secretly shipped off to a nursing home to watching my own daughter lose everything? Well, let me take you back to the beginning. I'm Harold Peterson, 78 years old, widowed, and until recently, I thought I had a loving family that respected me. After my wife Margaret passed away from heart failure, I lived alone in our family home, the same 2-story colonial we'd purchased when my daughter Jennifer was just 5 years old. The home where we celebrated birthdays, Christmases, graduations. The home that was paid off decades ago and worth nearly $850,000 in today's market. When I was diagnosed with early-stage prostate cancer 3 years ago, Jennifer and her husband Derek suggested I move in with them temporarily while I underwent treatment. They had the space, a 5-bedroom house in an affluent neighborhood with a finished basement they converted into what they called my apartment. It seemed like a sensible arrangement at the time, especially since it meant I could see more of my grandson Ethan. "Dad, we want you close by during your treatments," Jennifer had said, her hand on mine in the oncologist's waiting room. "We can drive you to appointments, make sure you're eating right, plus Ethan would love having his grandpa around." What I didn't realize then was that I was signing away my independence piece by piece. Remember that detail. It becomes very important later. The first few months were fine. I had my own space, my privacy was generally respected, and I enjoyed our family dinners and watching Ethan grow. My treatments were difficult but successful. The cancer went into remission, and I began to feel stronger. That's when I started noticing subtle changes. "Dad, Derek and I think you should let us handle your finances while you focus on your health," Jennifer suggested one evening after dinner. "It's just so much paperwork, and you shouldn't have to worry about that now." It seemed reasonable. I was tired from the treatments, and Jennifer had always been responsible. She had her MBA and worked in finance after all, so I gave her access to my accounts thinking it was temporary. But then weeks turned into months, and whenever I brought up resuming control of my finances, there was always some reason to postpone. "The market's volatile right now, Dad. We're just consolidating some of your investments. Let's wait until after your next checkup." You're probably thinking I should have put my foot down sooner. Believe me, I think that every day now. Then came the accidents around the house. Small things at first. A glass of water spilled, a stumble on the stairs that Jennifer happened to witness. "Dad, I'm worried about you," she'd say, her voice laced with a concern that I now recognize as performative. These little accidents could turn into something serious. The truth is, I was doing fine. Sure, I moved a little slower than in my 60s, but I was steady on my feet. I took daily walks around the neighborhood. I even did lightweight training at the senior center twice a week. But Jennifer began keeping a fall log that I didn't know about until much later, documenting every minor stumble or moment of fatigue as evidence of my declining health. But what really should have tipped me off was when my old friends started having trouble reaching me. "Dad, Richard called while you were napping. He wanted to invite you to golf, but I told him you weren't up for it these days," Jennifer would say casually. Or, "The senior center left a message about that volunteer program, but I told them you needed to focus on your health right now." I was being systematically isolated and I didn't even realize it. My world was shrinking to the confines of their home and my daughter was the gatekeeper. The next red flag came when Jennifer and Derek started organizing my belongings from my old house. "Dad, we need to talk about your house," Derek said one Sunday morning. "It's just sitting there empty and the maintenance is costing you money." "We could sell it," Jennifer chimed in. The market's hot right now. You could make a nice profit and we could put that money toward your future care. I hesitated. That house held my life with Margaret, our memories, our history. I'm not ready to sell, I told them. Maybe when I'm stronger I'll move back in. The look that passed between them should have warned me, but I missed it. Sure, Dad, Jennifer said smoothly, but at least let us clear out some things. You can't possibly need everything in there and it would make it easier to clean. I agreed to let them organize my belongings. That was my second major mistake. Over the next few weeks, truckloads of my possessions disappeared. Family heirlooms, Margaret's antique collection, my woodworking tools from the garage, all gone. We're just donating things you don't need anymore, Jennifer explained when I questioned her. It's part of downsizing. All the experts recommended at your age. At my age. As if I'd suddenly become incompetent because I'd celebrated a few more birthdays than her. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. Remember my grandson Ethan? 7 years old, bright as a new penny, with his grandmother's kind heart and curious mind. Ethan became my unlikely ally in this whole mess. It started with little comments from him. "Grandpa, why did Mommy put your gold watch in her jewelry box?" he asked one afternoon while we were building a model airplane together. "What gold watch, buddy?" I asked, confused. He was talking about my father's pocket watch, a family heirloom I'd planned to give to Ethan someday. It had been in my dresser drawer at my house, the one with the chain. Mommy said it was very valuable. She and Daddy were talking about it. I felt a cold sensation in my stomach. What else did they say? Ethan shrugged, focused on applying glue to a tiny airplane part. Something about estate and liquidating. I don't know what those words mean. Neither did Ethan, but I certainly did. They were liquidating my estate, while I was still very much alive. I started paying more attention after that. I began noticing mail that Jennifer would quickly whisk away before I could see it. Overheard phone conversations that abruptly ended when I entered the room. Whispered discussions between Jennifer and Derek late at night. But the real bombshell came 2 weeks later, the moment I told you about at the beginning. I was playing a board game with Ethan in my basement apartment when he dropped the news that would change everything. "Grandpa, Mom said you're going to live with the old people tomorrow," he said casually, moving his game piece across the board. "Will you still be able to teach me chess if you live there?" I kept my face neutral, not wanting to alarm him. "What old people, buddy?" "The place we visited last week, with all the old people in the hallways. Mom said it's called Sunny Pines, but it didn't look very sunny." He wrinkled his nose. "It smelled funny." My blood ran cold. They had been visiting nursing homes, preparing to move me, without ever discussing it with me, and they were planning to do it tomorrow. "Did Mom say why I'm going there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ethan nodded, his eyes on the game board. "She told Daddy you need special care now, and that once you're there they can finally access your..." He struggled with the word. "Equity." I think that's what she said. My equity. My house. My money. It all suddenly made horrible sense. That night I waited until the house was quiet. I needed to see for myself what they were planning. I crept upstairs to Jennifer's home office, feeling like a thief in what was supposed to be my home too. Her desk drawer was locked, but I knew they kept a spare key taped onto the drawer, an old habit of Jennifer's since high school. What I found made me physically ill. Paperwork for Sunny Pines Assisted Living, already filled out with my information. A power of attorney document with what looked like my signature, but I had never signed it. Bank statements showing large withdrawals from my accounts. Appraisal documents for my house. And most damning of all, a letter from their lawyer discussing the liquidation of assets following long-term care placement. They weren't just sending me to a nursing home. They were stealing everything I had. And they had forged my signature to do it. I felt my hands shaking as I carefully took photos of everything with my phone. A phone Jennifer had given me that was easier for seniors to use, with its limited functions and large buttons. Fortunately, it still had a camera. But here's where I need to tell you about my secret weapon, the one thing Jennifer didn't know about me. Before retiring, I wasn't just a mechanical engineer at General Motors. For the last 15 years of my career, I worked in their corporate fraud investigation unit. I knew exactly how financial elder abuse worked because I'd helped create training programs to prevent it. I carefully replaced everything, locked the drawer, and went back to my room. I had less than 24 hours before they planned to forcibly relocate me. I needed to act fast, but I also needed to be strategic. If I confronted them directly, they would accelerate their plans. I needed outside help. Remember Richard? The friend Jennifer kept telling me had stopped calling? I still had his number memorized. Using my senior-friendly phone, I called him at 6:00 a.m., knowing he'd be awake for his morning run. "Harold, is that really you?" He sounded shocked. "I've been trying to reach you for months. Jennifer keeps saying you're too ill for visitors." "Richard," I said quietly, aware that the household would be waking up soon. "I need your help and I need a lawyer today." Richard didn't hesitate. "I'll pick you up in 20 minutes, be ready." I packed a small bag with essentials and waited by the side door. When Richard's car pulled up, I slipped out quietly. Jennifer and Derek wouldn't be awake for another hour, and Ethan was a sound sleeper. "My God, Harold," Richard said when he saw me. "The way Jennifer talked, I expected you to be bedridden. You look fine." "I am fine," I said grimly, "and I need to stay that way." Richard's wife, Beth, was a retired social worker. While Richard drove, I explained everything. Beth made calls from the back seat. By 9 a.m., we were sitting in the office of Linda Goldstein, an elder law attorney who specialized in financial abuse cases. "What you're describing is criminal," Linda said after reviewing the photos I'd taken. "Forgery, fraud, elder abuse, attempted involuntary confinement. We need to act immediately to protect you and your assets." What happened next was a whirlwind. Linda filed emergency injunctions freezing all my accounts. She contacted the police to report the forgery and fraud. She initiated proceedings to revoke the fraudulent power of attorney. And she helped me secure a temporary restraining order against Jennifer and Derek. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up with calls and texts from Jennifer. "Dad, where are you? We're worried sick. Dad, please come home. We have a doctor's appointment today. Dad, this isn't funny. If you don't come home, we'll have to report you missing." I didn't respond. Linda advised against it. Anything I said could be twisted and used against me. Instead, she called them herself. "This is Linda Goldstein, attorney at law. I represent Harold Peterson. He is safe and under my protection. Any attempts to contact him directly will be considered harassment." The bombshell had been dropped, and now we waited for the fallout. It didn't take long. Within hours, Derek was calling Linda's office, alternating between threats and pleas. "This is all a misunderstanding. Harold is unwell. He's confused and paranoid because of his medication. We're only trying to protect him from himself." But the evidence was clear. The forged documents, the financial records, and then there was the testimony of my unlikely hero, 7-year-old Ethan. With the proper legal permissions and a child advocate present, Ethan innocently confirmed everything. How Mommy and Daddy talked about Grandpa's money all the time. How they'd taken things from Grandpa's house to sell. How they'd practiced copying Grandpa's signature for important papers. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. But here's where the story takes another unexpected turn. 3 weeks into the legal proceedings, while I was staying with Richard and Beth, I received a call from my old neighbor, Bill Thompson. "Harold, I don't know what's going on, but there are moving trucks at your house. Looks like someone's cleaning it out." Despite the restraining order and asset freeze, Jennifer and Derek had decided to take matters into their own hands. They were emptying my house, stealing what remained of my possessions before the courts could stop them. Linda immediately called the police, who arrived at my house to find Jennifer and Derek supervising a moving company loading furniture, artwork, and boxes into a large truck. When confronted, Jennifer had the audacity to produce the forged power of attorney, claiming she had every right to manage her father's affairs. The police, already briefed on the case, weren't buying it. Jennifer and Derek were handcuffed and taken to the police station. The movers, innocent parties in all this, were sent away. And just like that, my daughter and son-in-law found themselves facing criminal charges on top of the civil proceedings. Which brings us back to that scene I described at the beginning. Jennifer and Derek being escorted from my home by police officers after their arraignment, forbidden from entering the property by court order. Their faces showed no remorse. only anger at being caught and shock that I had outsmarted them. But the real gut punch for me wasn't their betrayal. I'd had weeks to process that. It was the moment Ethan ran to me from their car, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Can I still stay with you sometimes, Grandpa?" he asked, his voice small and confused. "I don't understand why Mom and Dad are in trouble. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that his parents tried to rob and abandon his grandfather? You don't." Instead, I knelt down to his level, my knees protesting. "Of course you can, buddy. Grown-ups sometimes make mistakes, but everyone still loves you very much. This is adult stuff that you don't need to worry about." The court appointed a guardian ad litem for Ethan to ensure his interests were protected throughout the proceedings. Jennifer's sister, my younger daughter Rebecca, flew in from California to take temporary custody. Unlike Jennifer, Rebecca had always lived modestly, pursuing her passion for teaching rather than wealth. We hadn't been as close as I'd like with her living across the country, but she stepped up when it mattered. "I had no idea, Dad," she said, tears in her eyes when we first met at the lawyer's office. "I should have checked on you more, called more often. Maybe I would have noticed something was wrong. You're here now," I told her. "That's what matters." The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Jennifer and Derek hired expensive attorneys who tried every trick in the book, claiming I was mentally incompetent, that Jennifer was only acting in my best interests, that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming: the forged documents, the financial records, the testimony from various parties, including, most damningly, from the director of Sunny Pines, who confirmed that Jennifer had specifically asked about their policies on limiting outside contact for residents. She had planned to put me away and make sure I couldn't reach out for help. In the end, Jennifer and Derek took a plea deal to avoid jail time, financial restitution, probation, mandatory counseling, a permanent restraining order, and the hardest consequence of all, supervised visitation with Ethan, whose custody was granted to Rebecca. I moved back into my house, the home I'd shared with Margaret, the home where we'd raised our daughters. Much of what Jennifer and Derek had taken was never recovered. Sold, they claimed, though the money had mysteriously disappeared. Family heirlooms gone forever. Margaret's jewelry, photo albums, pieces of my life scattered to the winds. But I was luckier than most victims of elder abuse. I got my house back. My remaining assets were secured. And most importantly, I maintained my independence. I hired a part-time housekeeper who helps with the heavier cleaning. I have a medical alert system just in case. Richard and I play golf twice a week. I volunteer teaching woodworking at the community center. And every other weekend, Ethan stays with me. We build model airplanes and play chess and talk about everything and nothing. Rebecca decided to relocate to be closer to us, taking a teaching position at a local school. She bought a small house just 3 blocks away. We have dinner together several times a week. We are rebuilding our relationship stronger than before. As for Jennifer and Derek, I haven't spoken to them since that day they were escorted from my property. Rebecca maintains minimal contact because of Ethan. From what I understand, they've had to downsize significantly. The legal fees alone nearly bankrupted them. Derek lost his job when the scandal broke. Apparently, financial institutions frown on employees who commit fraud, even against their own family members. They've moved to another state, starting over. Sometimes I feel a pang of sadness for what might have been. Jennifer was my firstborn, my little girl who once looked at me like I hung the moon. Where did that love go? When did I become nothing more than a balance sheet to her? These questions haunt me in the quiet hours. But then I remind myself of what I still have. My home, my dignity, my grandson's love, my younger daughter's devotion, friends who came through when it mattered most, and most importantly, my freedom, the right to live my life on my own terms, for however many years I have left. If there's one lesson in all this, it's that age doesn't make you powerless unless you allow it to. Knowledge is protection, awareness is armor, and even when betrayal comes from those you should be able to trust the most, there are still good people in the world willing to stand beside you. As for me, well, the cancer is still in remission. My doctor says I could easily have another decade or more of good health ahead. Time enough to see Ethan grow into a teenager. Time to rebuild relationships and create new memories. Time to live the life Margaret would have wanted for me. And time, perhaps, to eventually forgive, though I'm not quite there yet. So if you're watching this and you're worried about an elderly loved one, or if you're older yourself and something feels wrong about how you're being treated, don't wait. Reach out. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. There are resources and people who can help. Because no one deserves to hear from the innocent lips of a child that tomorrow they're being sent away to live with the old people. No one deserves to have their life, their dignity, their choices stripped away. And no one is too old to fight back.